to the WrestleHavoc podcast on YouTube, where we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. We talk all that goes on in the realm of WWE and AEW every week. And now, here's your host, the one that will give you a reality check on pro wrestling, Flamin' Ricky DeReyes. This is the WrestleHavoc podcast.
It is a historic week in the realm of world wrestling entertainment as WWE has officially been sold to the UFC's parent company, Endeavor. What's up, everybody? It is Flamin' Ricky DeReyes, right here on the WrestleHavoc podcast, episode 12. We are going to be talking about a lot, I mean a lot, of things, primarily WWE related. We're not really going to be talking right now about AEW. This has all got to do with WWE. On a weekend where WWE has probably, in my opinion, produced one of the best WrestleManias of all time, we came into Monday Night Raw definitely expecting a big show. Lo and behold, literally our hopes were destroyed as we were watching that show. And Vince McMahon is officially back in creative. Say what you want. You may deny it all you want. But after that show, Vince McMahon is back. And it's not for the betterment of the company. It is only for the betterment, in my opinion, of Vince McMahon. But we are going to be talking about the official sale of WWE and why it is a big deal for the company and where it will take the company. If you guys do not know, Endeavor is the parent company of the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championship, and WWE and UFC are about to merge as basically still two separate entities, but they're going to be merging and they're going to be under the same umbrella. So it's going to be a big deal from the business side of WWE. We're going to be discussing the business end of it. Hopefully I can explain the business endings of it very well because I'm not really a big business guy. But hopefully I can definitely try to explain everything to you guys as well. We got Jay White as well. We're going to be talking about Vince McMahon, the backstage morale backstage, how it reached an all-time low. Literally, last year the morale was bad when Vince McMahon was still in charge. But as soon as Triple H took over creative, the morale in the company went from below all the way up. And then all of a sudden the morale on Raw went immediately back down. Vince McMahon also got a new mustache. We're going to be talking about him running creative and basically stating the same shit that he stated when Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff were first anointed as the head of creative or the exclusive directors, executive directors of WWE. Let's be honest, Vince McMahon was still running the ship, not those two men. But we're going to be talking about all this and much more right here on episode 12 of the WrestleHavoc podcast, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content. And as the frickin' referee would say, ring, ring, ring that damn bell for more notifications. Also, the WrestleHavoc podcast is also available on audio platforms. It is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, and Google Podcasts. So if you guys want to listen to the WrestleHavoc podcast in audio format, it is available on all of those platforms. If you guys also haven't checked out my WrestleMania reviews, Night 1 is up on the channel. We discuss Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn finally dethroning the Usos in an absolute emotional show stealer. Fantastic main event to close off Night 1. Overall, Night 1 was a fantastic WrestleMania, in my opinion. Night 2 as well, we had Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns. An amazing main event with a bullshit ending as Roman Reigns retains the undisputed title. I'm going to be talking about that as well. And, of course, I'm going to be talking about Raw. Last night's Raw, or I should say 2 nights ago, the Raw review is already up on the channel. We talk about how Vince McMahon came in and possibly booked the worst Raw after WrestleMania possible. It was a bad show, ladies and gentlemen. And if anybody denies that, they are in complete denial and they are completely biased. This show was garbage and this show was boring. Literally, the days of Raw after WrestleMania being amazing are out the window. Literally, the crowd was dead throughout the majority of the show, in my opinion. Not a very good show at all, in my opinion. But all 3 of those videos are up on the channel, and if you guys haven't checked it out, check it out The link will be in the description below. So let's talk about the sale of WWE to Endeavor. This is a big story. We all know that Vince McMahon earlier this year forced his way back into the company. And yes, I use that term not very loosely, very strongly. He forced himself back into the company because he couldn't stand retirement and wanted basically to, quote unquote, sell the company. No, it was never about the sale of the company. It was always about Vince McMahon wanting control back. But in an article of CNBC, WWE agrees to merge with the UFC to create a new company run by Ariel Emanuel and Vince McMahon. Some key points is WWE agreed to merge with UFC as part of a deal with Endeavor Group. Ariel Emanuel's Endeavor owns UFC and would control a majority stake in the new company. And Vince McMahon's WWE has sought a buyer for months. Vince McMahon's World Wrestling Entertainment has agreed to merge with UFC to form a new publicly traded company controlled by Endeavor Group. The company is announced Monday morning. Endeavor will own 51% stake in the new combat sports and entertainment company, while WWE shareholders will have a remaining 49% according to the terms of the agreement. The deal values WWE at $9.3 billion. Does that number sound familiar? Of course, there was reports a couple of weeks ago in which WWE, or I should say Vince McMahon, wanted to sell WWE for $9 billion, roughly around $9 billion. I remember coming on here and talking about this and basically stating, I don't think WWE is worth $9 billion. My best estimate is WWE is at least roughly worth $5 to $6 billion. But $9 billion, in my opinion, that's a little bit of a stretch. So he asked for $9.3 billion, and the value is at $9.3 billion. And UFC, which is owned by Endeavor, is at $12.1 billion, the company said in a press release. The transaction is expected to close in the second half of 2023. Shares of WWE fell more than 2%, and Endeavor declined over 5% on Monday. Ariel Emanuel will act as chief executive of both Endeavor and the new company, the company said. McMahon, likewise, will be the executive chairman, while Endeavor president and COO Mark Shapiro will also work in the same roles at the new company. Dana White will remain as president of the UFC, and WWE CEO Nick Khan will stay as the president of the wrestling business. In a quote by Emanuel, he says, "This is going to be UFC 2.0, Emanuel said in an interview that aired Monday on CNBC's Squawked on the Street. The board will consist of 11 people, 6 appointed by Endeavor and 5 by WWE. The merged company's name will be announced at a later time, and the company will trade on the New York Stock Exchange under the ticker symbol TKO. The announcement also confirmed in an earlier CNBC report. It also came a day after WWE wrapped its flagship live event, WrestleMania in California. The company has spent the past several months looking for a buyer. McMahon also returned to WWE as chairman in January to oversee the process. And WWE has a market valuation of about $6.5 billion. Endeavor has a market cap of about $10 billion. The agreement would pair two of the biggest sports entertainment brands in the world. Despite notable differences, WWE features scripted matches and soap opera-like storylines, while the UFC showcases authentically brutal mixed martial arts fighting. The organizations share similarities in terms of content and culture. Several UFC fighters, including Ronda Rousey and Brock Lesnar, have already wrestled for WWE. Then they later continue to talk about basically the business ends of WWE. And Comcast, NBC Universal, has an existing cable and streaming deal with WWE. Fox also has a separate media deal with WWE. The combined company may also explore a new direct-to-consumer opportunity, says Emanuel. Emanuel also told CNBC that he asked McMahon to stay with the combined company as executive chairman. McMahon said he didn't have to be convinced to stick around with what has been a family business for decades. McMahon's father founded WWE in its original incarnation during the middle of the 20th century. McMahon bought the company from his father in 1982 and is the controlling shareholder. And over the past 4 decades, WWE has grown into a global phenomenon, spawning breakout stars such as Hulk Hogan, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Dave Bautista, and John Cena. And Mr. McMahon stated, and I quote, "It is a great day. Things have to evolve. Family businesses have to evolve for all the right reasons." McMahon, at 77 years old, retired from the company in July following a string of revelations that he paid several women millions of dollars over the years to keep them quiet about alleged affairs and misconduct. Over the summer, WWE acknowledged that other entities were investigating the hush-money payments. The Wall Street Journal had reported about federal probes in the matter. McMahon's daughter, Stephanie McMahon, became the co-CEO alongside Nick Khan. Paul Levesque, who is both Stephanie McMahon's husband and wrestler known as Triple H, took over the creative duties from Vince McMahon. After Vince McMahon came back in January, Stephanie McMahon stepped down and Khan fully assumed the CEO role. I wonder why. And after that, the elder McMahon recently locked in a 2-year employment contract. So keep in mind, Mr. McMahon, Vince McMahon, is literally locked in a 2-year contract. He's right now the executive chairman still of WWE, even after the sale went through, or it's going to go through by the end of this year. Vince McMahon has a 2-year employment contract, so he's still going to be the chairman. So if anything, he is going to be sticking around for the next 2 years. And Vince McMahon acknowledged in his CNBC interview, and I quote, "I've made a lot of mistakes both personally and professionally." McMahon told CNBC he won't be in the weeds. Now, this is actually a key interesting point. So Vince McMahon and Ari Emanuel were both interviewed in CNBC. And Mr. McMahon, I keep calling him Mr. McMahon, Jesus Christ. Vince McMahon was asked about if he will still be in the creative ends of WWE. And Vince McMahon was like, yes and no. And he says he won't be, quote unquote, in the weeds with WWE's creative decisions when the companies merge. Now, that in the weeds statement alone sounds very, very, very familiar. Because if you guys do not remember, back, I believe it was roughly around the spring into the summer of 2019, where WWE appointed both Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff as the executive directors of both Raw and SmackDown. Everybody was so hyped around the bullshit around Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff. Oh my God, they're finally going to make WWE better. Vince McMahon stated that exact same thing when they both anointed Eric Bischoff and Paul Heyman as the executive directors of both Raw and SmackDown. And look where that led them. Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff were nothing but scapegoats. That is it. Khan, in a continuation, Khan in recent weeks has been making the media rounds to discuss the potential sale. He told CNBC's Morgan Brennan on Thursday that there's been a robust process that drew many interested buyers. Emanuel reiterated that to CNBC that the sale process was competitive. WWE also fits well with the cultures of Endeavor and UFC, which also reflect their leaders' hard-edged styles. McMahon, Emanuel, and White are known for their outsized personalities, and each has their share of devoted allies and harsh critics. White is no stranger to scandal either, because earlier this year a video emerged showing the UFC boss slapping his wife during a public argument at a New Year's Eve party in Mexico, and he later apologized. So, it's pretty obvious that this is a big deal for the company. This is probably one of the most historic days in the history of WWE. Now, Dana White made a comment on Endeavor, basically, buying the WWE, or I should say 51% of the WWE, and he states in a quote, and I quote, "This company has been on fire for the last 7 years, and now we are adding WWE to the portfolio. I'm excited to take this to another level. Vince is a savage in the wrestling space. Ari is a beast at what he does, and then to add what we at UFC bring to the table, and there is no limit to what this company can accomplish in the next few years." So, what are my thoughts on this whole transaction that's going to be taking place between Endeavor and WWE? I remember coming on here and stating, the list of potential buyers to buy WWE. And I didn't rule out Endeavor. Endeavor was a very interesting scenario because Endeavor, would definitely purchase a powerhouse like WWE. Let's be honest with ourselves. WWE is a complete powerhouse. They are a money-making machine. WrestleMania literally damn near sold out 2 nights in a row. I believe the second night sold out. And literally they made over $20 million, I believe it was, for the event alone. Merchandise sales, they made millions of dollars of that alone. They made a shit ton of money. WWE at this point makes their money off of their name value, especially for WrestleMania. You have fans that do not watch the shows weekly that will go to WrestleMania because it's WrestleMania. And that is just the reality of the situation. And you know what? That is a good thing because they are making money regardless. It can be a good thing in your eyes, but at the same time, it can be a bad thing in your eyes. In the WWE's eyes, all they care about is making money. That's all they care about. If you honestly think they give a shit about you, they don't give a shit about you. They care about the money that they make. And you know what? At the end of the day, this shit's a business. But it's safe to say that this is a very historic day in the company. And I've always stated when I listed off the amount of potential buyers like Disney possibly buying WWE, Saudi Arabia, y'all remember that? Saudi Arabia potentially buying WWE, Amazon was also there, Comcast, a lot of people were honestly thinking that Comcast was going to buy WWE. A lot of other people even thought Fox was going to buy WWE, which honestly, I did not think that was going to be the case. Because I feel like they kind of felt like they got shafted after WWE made that Peacock deal, because the Peacock deal is actually a separate deal from their NBC Universal deal. But this is nothing but a historic, day for the company. Now, the interesting thing is are there going to be layoffs in the company? How is the morale going to be treated? Is Vince McMahon going to be in the creative process? Well, clearly, we found out on Monday. Now, I'm going to be reading these reports from Fightful, because these are actually very, very, very interesting notes. So Fightful reported on Monday that there will be a world company-wide meeting at 4 p.m., and an email was distributed internally stating that Triple H will remain as WWE's chief content executive. Those that we spoke to in WWE were adamant that even Vince McMahon was involved in the quote-unquote top levels of creative, and Triple H will be the person in gorilla position leading the charge. We specifically asked about Vince McMahon stating that he, quote-unquote, wouldn't be in the weeds anymore with creative, since he said the same thing 4 years ago when Eric Bischoff and Paul Heyman were put in creative roles to oversee Raw and SmackDown. Exactly the same shit that I stated moments ago. There is expected to be a talent meeting soon. Now, keep in mind, this was at 1:33 p.m. I'm reading this from Fightful Select. There is expected to be a talent meeting soon. Triple H is rumored to kick off Raw, and the WWE creative has been adamant that they haven't interacted directly with Vince McMahon creatively. And the higher-ups say that he likes the process of how things are done now, though the exact level of his involvement was not revealed to us. They did say that Triple H was overseeing creative, and Vince McMahon is around as a resource if needed. We asked if a looming deal had anything to do with Roman Reigns retaining the championship over Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania, and we were told, quote-unquote, absolutely not. The speculation within WWE is that Vince McMahon found a suitor that would keep him involved or integrate him if he chose, despite insisting that he'd be happy to sell to the partner that didn't want him to be involved. Sources from several rumored suitors told us that Vince McMahon's involvement would be a hurdle, and WWE had proven that they can and be more successful without him. WWE sources indicated Fightful that a big part of the deal was the company's desire to expand internationally, especially as it pertains to international television rights, site fees, and like that they're looking to increase. Now, there are rights fees negotiations in the UK that WWE is seeking to make more money off and increase visibility. They're also looking to increase their rate cards domestically, as they feel that they should be earning even more on their television deals. WWE sources were adamant that they're not planning on expanding premium live events into a pay-per-view pay situation again for the time being. They noted that anything is possible, but it would have to be a deal so huge that they couldn't turn it down. They are cognizant of being short-sighted, and as it relates to the future of WWE pay-per-views and where it's going. We were also told that it was not an accident that hiring slowed down in recent months, almost to a complete halt. When we asked about potential looming cuts, we were given a definitive answer one way or the other, and we will have a completely separated story this week on the talent reaction of the move. So one thing I want to really note is pay-per-views. Now, I believe Nick Khan, it was last week, a couple of days before WrestleMania, had an interview, and he was talking about potentially adding a paywall to the pay-per-views again, that we would possibly in the next couple of years, potentially, would pay $50 once again for a WWE pay-per-view. Now, we can't shy away that the fact that WWE has a current deal with NBCU's streaming service Peacock, which has the entirety of the WWE network, plus all of their pay-per-views. So we wouldn't be having to pay $50 for a WWE pay-per-view in the next 3 years, I believe. I believe the deal is up in 2026. Correct me if I'm wrong. What are my thoughts on if WWE would possibly look into adding a paywall, that being $50, paying $50 for a WWE pay-per-view. I think it's a bad thing in my opinion. The reason why is because you consumed your audience for the past almost 10 years, ever since the WWE launched in February of 2014. You consumed your audience to basically only pay $10 a month, which is not a lot of money, for a pay-per-view every month, plus you get exclusive content, and plus you get the entire tape library. So the fact that you want fans to pay $50 again for a pay-per-view for WWE after over 10 years, like, you know, you consumed your audience to pay only $10 a month, now $4 a month if you have, you know, a Peacock Premium. Like, I think that's honestly ridiculous in my opinion. Not only that, with the news of Vince McMahon now being in charge, do you honestly expect Vince McMahon to book a good show for you to shell out $50 for a pay-per-view? Keep in mind, a UFC pay-per-view is on ESPN+. You'd have to pay $10 a month for ESPN+. Not only that, pay an extra $70 to $80 for that particular UFC pay-per-view. $80 for a UFC pay-per-view. That is ridiculous, in my opinion. Absolutely ridiculous. I literally pay $50 5 times a year for an AEW pay-per-view. It used to be 4, but now it's 5 times a year because now they added Forbidden Door. Plus $40 3 times a year for a Ring of Honor pay-per-view. Honestly, you know, I think WWE adding a paywall to a pay-per-view, to their pay-per-views, is not a bad idea. I'm mixing up my words because I'm so pissed. I think it's a bad move on WWE's end, in my opinion, to do that. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. Now, I don't want to say in other news, but continuing on with the discussion of the Endeavor selling, you know, not Endeavor buying WWE, what is one of the positives that can come out of this? One of the positives is cross-promotion. I think cross-promotion is definitely integral for any business, especially two businesses that are very different, but at the same time, very similar to one another. You know, WWE loves their crossover appeal, and I think them having crossover with the UFC is definitely a great thing business-wise for the company, and you will definitely be seeing a lot of that in the near future. I think what we saw at WrestleMania with them sponsoring a bunch of matches, even though they tend to overdo it a little bit, WWE is starting to sponsor more of their matches for their pay-per-views. That is definitely a UFC thing to do. I feel like they're going to go a little bit more sports-centric and more sponsor-heavy with all of these different types of matches. I think it's pretty obvious for WWE to do that. I've been saying this for years. WWE really should start to add sponsors, you know, maybe in the barricade or maybe in the ring mat. Literally have the presentation feel more sports-oriented, in my opinion. AEW does that really well. You know, you say what you want about AEW, but one of the things that I like about AEW is that they have a lot of sponsors all around the ringside area. It makes it feel like a big fight feel, in my opinion. But also, you know, a con that we have to really think about is why WWE sold to Endeavor. And this is the main reason why. It's not about the sale of the company. It's about Vince McMahon at the end of the day. Do you want to know why Vince McMahon sold to Endeavor and not anybody else? Is because if he were to sell WWE to anybody else, the people that would possibly buy the company would be like, hey, we want to run this company, but we don't want you here. Vince McMahon looked at Endeavor and was like, hey, look, I'm selling this company, but I still want to be around. And Ari Emanuel, who is friends with Vince McMahon for 2 decades, is of course going to listen to Vince McMahon. Why do you think he sold it to Endeavor? Because Vince McMahon is going to remain in power. Vince McMahon only cares about Vince McMahon. He doesn't care about the betterment of the company. He cares about himself. Period. I talked about this months before when he forced himself back into the company. Vince McMahon cares about himself. WWE has proven these past couple months that they can literally make a shit ton of money without Vince McMahon there. Vince McMahon is not needed whatsoever. Triple H proved that these past few months. And if you don't believe me, clearly you are in denial. Vince McMahon being involved is possibly the worst thing to happen to the company. Speaking on Vince McMahon, that is basically going to be our next topic. Vince McMahon. So I'm going to be continuing to talk about this, and we got details on the WWE employee meeting and talent meetings. During March 3rd's WWE employee meeting, it was claimed that Endeavor isn't going to be involved in the creative or production of the show, which is, I think, pretty obvious. I think that's one of the other reasons that WWE sold to Endeavor, is because if you really think about it, when Endeavor bought the UFC in 2016, look where the UFC is now. The UFC has been exactly what it was before it was even sold to Endeavor, before Zuffa sold it to Endeavor. The UFC has been exactly the same as far as I'm concerned. I don't think Endeavor has been involved with anything. So that's one of the reasons. So that's pretty much obvious. And the meeting was headed up. Speaking on the meeting was headed up by Triple H, Nick Khan, and Frank Riddick. There were a few details as to how other areas could or would be affected. There was also a talent meeting at 6 p.m. Eastern ahead of WWE Raw. Some SmackDown talent and Raw talent that weren't booked were not in attendance, as many were on a nearly 10-day travel stretch. We're told that the talent meeting was led by Nick Khan and Triple H. WWE spoke about the record WrestleMania numbers and pressed that nothing would change under Endeavor. However, Vince was mentioned a few times when they listed the names of people in control, although there was nothing specific provided regarding Vince McMahon. They did not take any questions during the meeting. In a follow-up report, we got a huge hit of WWE morale with Vince McMahon and all of these Monday Night Raw changes. Now, this is something that I definitely want to read to you guys. This is coming from Fightful Select. This is very interesting because clearly throughout the past couple of months, ever since Vince McMahon forced his way back into the company, there was a lot of speculation about Vince McMahon being involved in the creative process. And this is definitely a huge deal. There's a huge hit to the morale in WWE with Vince McMahon and all of the Raw changes. So I'm reading this once again from Fightful Select. There was a huge hit to WWE morale on Monday after Vince McMahon made sweeping changes right after WWE held a talent meeting where Paul Levesque, that being Triple H, and Nick Khan told talent that nothing would be changing. And minutes before, Triple H did an on-screen promo saying much of the same. After months of being assured that Vince McMahon was not involved in creative, several, that's the key word, several WWE talent were frustrated when the day of the announced WWE deal. A bunch of Vince McMahon-esque changes were made. McMahon came along right before the show started, and right after WWE led meetings saying nothing would change, and quite literally changed much of it. He was also in gorilla position all night after WWE had told numerous sources that Triple H was to be leading the charge in that position. There were changes made well into the show and new run sheets being passed along. McMahon had also had his own office all weekend. After saying he would not be, quote-unquote, in the weeds with creative in an interview earlier that day, Vince McMahon instead came in and literally made last-minute sweeping changes that frustrated several on his roster. There were several that said that they didn't even think that the changes were creatively poor, but the entire dishonesty of the situation, considering that over a dozen of these people had previously been fired under Vince McMahon, was a depressing blow, I should say. In addition to the hint of his involvement we'd reported last week, there were big changes on short notice between 6 p.m. Eastern and the talent meeting at the show, and the show itself had largely been absent since Triple H took over creative. After that, there was originally set to be this is the key thing, 2 triple threat women's matches that would serve as a tournament for the Raw Women's title shot. Instead, the women's segments were cut and the tag team contender match was booked. Bayley was also scheduled to be ringside, which was cut. We're told that several of the women on the roster grew frustrated by the adjustment. Many staff and talent have said that after a successful WrestleMania and several months without Vince McMahon that displayed that they could be much successful, smooth, and happy, it was demoralizing to have that happen. Several of the women on the roster were very disappointed, including a number of them weren't even at the show. In all, this was the biggest hit to morale since Vince McMahon left his spot last year, and probably the lowest point of morale in totality since pre-WrestleMania in 2022 when it reached near all-time lows. Needless to say, last night was a huge shot. Vince McMahon was in gorilla position throughout the show and made numerous changes. Even while the show was on the air, production and talent were getting instructions as the show went on the air. I wonder where we got that from, because I can remember back in 2019, 2020, 2021 when Vince McMahon was running the ship. Literally every fucking week we would hear reports of Vince McMahon is ripping up the script last minute changes to Raw and SmackDown, all this crazy bullshit. Not once, when Triple H was in charge, not once did we ever hear a report saying Triple H ripped up a script last minute. No, they had plans and they went full-fledged with those plans. That was the beauty of Triple H and WWE. But no, under Vince McMahon, he didn't give a fuck. He just wanted to change those plans last minute because clearly Vince McMahon does not know what the fuck he is doing. Omos versus Elias was also a late addition, and several things that were originally planned for the show did not end up happening. We were told that Omos wasn't catering and wasn't planning on wrestling, and then the late change happened, and there was a scramble to make sure he had gear to compete in. An old Vince McMahon rule was to always bring your gear and always to stay till the end of the show, largely because he was constantly changing things. There was also talent that was scrambling to do last-minute shoots. There were backstage elements, including Cody talking on the phone, and a Bad Bunny interrogation that was also changed, or LWO Bad Bunny interrogation that was also changed, but we're not sure if those were Vince McMahon changes. The decision for Brock Lesnar to quote-unquote team with Cody Rhodes was solidified by Monday morning. Numerous WWE talent were also disappointed as they felt that this weekend was a way for Vince McMahon to wedge himself back into the fold. Just earlier on Monday, WWE sources claimed that Triple H would be the person leading the gorilla position. However, Vince McMahon was present, and many talent felt like they were sold a bill of goods. While we spoke to one higher-up that said Friday SmackDown will be a big test and an important day for the company, noting that Vince McMahon was already in Los Angeles for the weekend when Raw after WrestleMania happened. However, if he travels all the way to Portland for SmackDown, whether he's in gorilla position or not, it will be a huge negative sign for talent and staff. There are important people in the company who had no idea he was planning to make changes Monday and don't know his plans for Friday. Fightful heard from at least two talent, including one near the top of the card that said they'll likely request their releases if this is a trend moving forward, and add another that said that they'll just ride out their deal. There are multiple wrestlers who are already exploring what their options would be in the event Vince McMahon were to be steadily involved. It's amazing how all of this morale just happens, man. Literally. Vince McMahon running things in WWE in the creative ends is not a good thing for the company, in my opinion. It's not a good thing at all. Clearly, we all know what Vince McMahon is capable of. The man is completely out of touch. He does not know what the fuck he is doing. And all the proof that Vince McMahon is running things in the creative ends clearly showed on Monday's Raw. Clearly showed. And if you still deny that, then you are completely brain dead. You just are. And I mean that with the utmost respect. Vince McMahon running the ship in WWE is the worst decision that the company could make. WWE has proven time and time again that the company can literally survive without Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon retired back in July of last year, and WWE's stock went up. Now, the stock went up again a couple of days ago when WWE announced the Endeavor deal, and you have people on the internet say that, oh yeah, the stock went up because of Vince McMahon. No, you're wrong. The stock didn't go up because of Vince McMahon. The stock went up because of the fact that the WWE got sold to Endeavor. Whenever there's a sale, that means there's dollar signs, and of course the stock price goes up. The stock price didn't go up because of Vince McMahon. Newsflash, when Triple H first took over creative, the stock went up. So, clearly, there's a big issue going on in the WWE, and the talent are very worried to see what the hell is going to be happening. And the fact that the morale hit an all-time low last year. I remember, man, there was a report that came out, I believe it was like immediately after WrestleMania. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember there was a report that came out that the backstage morale in WWE was so low. And after that, when Vince McMahon retired and Triple H took over, literally the morale immediately shifted all the way up, and literally WWE was the fucking place to be. You had people, granted, most of these returns did not pay off the way we would all expect. Let's be honest with ourselves. And Triple H's running creative wasn't perfect, but it was damn near better than what Vince McMahon was doing. And look, Triple H, when he was running things in the WWE, he brought back a lot of guys who were originally either released or fired under the Vince McMahon regime to give them a second chance, because Triple H actually gives a shit for the talent. This is not a good situation. We're going to have to wait and see what happens on Friday. But honestly, this is not a good thing in my opinion. You know, again, I constantly say this, man. It was never about the sale of the company. Vince McMahon wants power. Did you honestly think he was sitting on his ass in his mansion from July all the way to January? No, man. Vince McMahon is not stupid. And I don't mean that in the best way possible. He's not stupid, man. He was literally planning this shit out throughout the time he was out. Vince McMahon saw that Triple H was being more successful than him, and Vince McMahon was like, oh no, I need to come back. Vince McMahon is an egomaniac at the end of the day, and we all know this. We all know what Vince McMahon is capable of. When the stories came out on the Wall Street Journal, I wasn't surprised. I wasn't shocked. I wasn't shocked because I knew Vince McMahon was capable of doing shit like that. I mean, Vince McMahon, at the end of the day, cares about one thing, and that is himself. He doesn't even care about the betterment of the company. And the fact that the backstage morale has hit a all-time low, I'm being honest, and I don't want to sound like a shill here, but Tony Khan is literally the happiest that he has ever been right now. Because as soon as Triple H took over, all the backstage drama in AEW was going on. And now, let's be honest, AEW right now has definitely recovered from it. And Tony Khan right now must be so happy that this is happening. Vince McMahon going back in charge for WWE is literally the best thing to ever happen to AEW. Literally the best thing to ever happen to them. And honestly, the fact that Vince McMahon is now officially back in power, we will know officially who is going to be in charge. If there are reports that SmackDown script has changed multiple times, you already know who is in charge. You already know. And it's not Triple H. It is Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon, keep in mind, never wanted to retire. Never. He was ousted and he was forced to retire because of all the bullshit that came out about him. The fact that people are still willing to work for this man is insane. Now, there's a lot of top guys that has worked for Vince McMahon for years, and I would understand that they would want to work for him. But Jesus Christ, there's a lot of people that are working for him that are like, Jesus Christ, I'm working for a pimp. Not only that, Vince McMahon actually does look like a pimp. Have you seen recent photos of Vince McMahon? Vince McMahon has a very bad mustache now. He looks like a certified pimp, in my opinion. But overall, this is not a good look, in my opinion. Vince McMahon returning in creative is the utmost worst thing or worst decision that the WWE has ever made. And now Vince McMahon has to answer to somebody in Ariel Emanuel. He's an employee now of the company. And honestly, if Vince McMahon is running things in creative and things goes to shit, what the hell is going to happen? We do not know. But clearly, Ariel Emanuel has to know that at some point Vince McMahon is going to have to just stop with all this bullshit. Because Vince McMahon clearly, just wants power, and that is it. And the talent morale, showed backstage. Clearly, it went from highs all the way down to a low. And it's not a good thing, in my opinion. It is not a good thing. We got WrestleMania and WWE Raw changes. I'm once again reading this from Fightful Select. If you wanted to see LA Knight and Bobby Lashley at WrestleMania, you were close to it. The April 3rd episode of Raw featured tons of late last-minute changes thanks to Vince McMahon, and we learned that even more of that happened throughout the weekend. We can't say definitively if McMahon contributed to these changes, however. We can confirm that WRKD Wrestling's report that LA Knight was pitched and planned to have a segment with Bobby Lashley. WWE had the Andre the Giant Battle Royal trophy transported to SoFi Stadium specifically to do an entrance. Originally, Shotzi was set to have her tank for the entrance, and it was on site for WrestleMania. However, it did not get used. There was also a scrapped integration of the LWO on Raw that was likely to feature Bad Bunny, and Cody Rhodes was originally supposed to have a segment where he was talking on the phone, but was eliminated by Monday morning. The Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn versus Street Profits match, at least internally, was referred to as a tag team championship match. Candice LeRae and Piper Niven were planned to have matches for Raw, and then they were cut just about an hour before the show. And there was originally set to be a mini tournament to determine the top contender for the Raw Women's Championship. However, it was switched to the Women's Tag Team Title Contender match as much as late as well. Of course, there was also an Omos/Elias match that was added last minute. There was also online speculation that Seth Rollins' WWE Raw segment was changed last minute because someone ringside appeared to be giving him instructions. However, sources familiar with the situation claimed it was originally scripted that way. I genuinely believe that wasn't the case. I believe there was something set for Seth Rollins, and if you guys did watch that segment on Raw, it felt very off. What the fuck was the point of Seth Rollins coming into the ring if he wasn't going to say anything? Like, seriously. That made no sense whatsoever. So, the fact that that happened, Seth Rollins, and there was a video that a fan posted on social media with Seth Rollins getting instructions from a certain instructor. Seth Rollins then threw the mic literally across the ring onto the outside near the announce table. He looked pissed. He did not look happy at all. So clearly there's something going on regarding the backstage morale. Something going on. And it's not a good look. Not a good look. But yeah, those were my thoughts on Vince McMahon. And we got more news stories. Well, really one news story. And this is something that I really want to talk about. And that is Switchblade, the former IWGP World Heavyweight Champion Switchblade Jay White, reportedly not expected to sign with the WWE. At this point, thank fucking Christ. There was reportedly no talk about White this past weekend. I'm reading this from F4W Online. It does not appear that the former New Japan Pro Wrestling star and former IWGP World Champion Jay White will be heading to WWE. According to PW Insider, there was, quote-unquote, absolutely no discussion regarding Jay White during the past WrestleMania 39 weekend in Los Angeles, and based on, quote-unquote, multiple conversations with WWE officials and talents, we are told that it does not appear that White is WWE bound. In January, it was reported that Jay White expected to hit free agency when his New Japan Pro Wrestling contract expired. The former Bullet Club leader lost a Loser Leaves Japan match to Hikuleo at New Year's Dash, followed by a Loser Leaves New Japan match to Eddie Kingston at Battle in the Valley. At one point, both WWE and AEW were reportedly interested in signing the 30-year-old Switchblade, who left New Japan as their fifth Triple Crown champion and the first Grand Slam champion. The New Zealand native has wrestled twice in AEW before, once prior to last June's Forbidden Door, and then in a successful IWGP title defense in a four-way at the pay-per-view. So I wanted to note this because I feel like it plays into Vince McMahon running things in creative again. I think Jay White going to the WWE now is not a good decision, and we all know right now that Jay White is no longer WWE bound. At the end of the day, I think that's a good thing. Jay White should stay the hell away from the WWE. If Triple H was running things fully, I would say, yeah, he would go to the WWE and have a great run there, and he'd be a world champion and a main eventer there. But with Vince McMahon running the charge there, I think it's best for Jay White not to go there. Now, thing about it is a lot of people had doubts of him possibly going to AEW, but I think clearly as to we see right now, I think Jay White is definitely AEW bound. I don't think he's going to go to fucking Impact. He's definitely going to go to AEW, in my opinion. I may be wrong. But let's be honest. If he goes to AEW, and a lot of people were asking the question, how are you going to utilize Jay White? This is my prediction. If Jay White signs with AEW, Jay White is going to be a certified main eventer in a year. Watch. I think he's going to be a world champion in a year if he goes to AEW. Now, we do not know, but if he does, I think he will be a world champion there because with the caliber of a talent of Jay White, this guy's going to be treated very, very, very well. And he will definitely be AEW world champion. Not now, maybe in a year. We do not know. It all depends on MJF's title run, but I think I'm thinking a little bit too much, but Jay White, I think he'd have a great run in AEW. Plus, there's a lot of people that he's friends with there at AEW. So honestly, I think he'd have a great run over there overall. And the potential feuds that he would have with guys like maybe Adam Cole, Ricky Starks, Chris Jericho, you name it, Kenny Omega, he's there as well. But again, Jay White going to WWE at this point, he shouldn't go there. If Triple H was still running things fully without the input of Vince McMahon, I'd say, yeah, he'd have a great run in the WWE, and he'd go straight to the main roster. I think if you'd put Jay White directly to NXT, I think that'd be a waste of your investment. I think if you brought in Jay White to the WWE, you'd shoot him straight to the main roster. That is it. But now, I do not think Jay White is going to go to the WWE, and nor he should. He should stay the fuck away, in my opinion. And another thing I want to really keep in mind is tonight is AEW Dynamite, and on AEW Dynamite, we have FTR versus the Guns for the AEW Tag Team titles. That's titles versus careers, and FTR's AEW's careers are on the line. Literally, with all this Vince McMahon news, it literally gave me more hope that FTR is going to be staying with AEW. Because I genuinely do not think FTR going to the WWE is the right career move for them. I genuinely believe that. FTR, in my opinion, is the best tag team in the world today, and I don't think you want to devalue your stock by going back to WWE, let alone the fact that Vince McMahon is running things right now in creative. And we all know Dax Harwood and Cash Wheeler, formerly known as The Revival, definitely dealt with Vince McMahon in creative when they were there. It's pretty obvious. Another thing I want to know is the Elite and Kenny Omega. Their contracts are coming up. Do you honestly think they would want to work for a Vince McMahon-run WWE? I'm not sure, man. And that also gives me more hope that Tony Khan is paying them a boatload of money to stay there because, let's be honest, without the Elite, there is no AEW. You can say Tony Khan, yeah, all you want, but without the Elite, there is no AEW. And if the Elite ever leave AEW, I think that'd be a big blow to the company. But I'm going to be honest, man. From what it looks like now, I have more hopes, and my hopes are much higher than what they were a couple of weeks ago, that the Elite would probably sign extensions with AEW. That's just my opinion, but I may be wrong. But from what it looks like now, the morale is not good in the WWE right now. And we're just going to have to wait and see what happens in the near future. But yeah, that was everything that I got for you guys for episode 12 of the WrestleHavoc podcast. We definitely talked a lot. We talked about the sale of WWE, what this means for the future of WWE, and the involvement of Vince McMahon in the creative ends. It's not really looking good, in my opinion. It's not really looking good. If you guys haven't checked out all my videos, of course, I talk about WrestleMania's Night 1 and Night 2. I also talk about Raw, in which I talk about Vince McMahon literally coming in and booking the worst Raw possible. So if you guys haven't checked out all of those videos, the links will be in the description below. But yeah, that's all I got for you guys. Please like, subscribe, comment down below, push that bell for notifications. Have me on the lookout for more videos right here on the WrestleHavoc podcast, right here on YouTube, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content. And as the freaking referee would say, ring that damn bell for more notifications. And as always, it is Flamin' Ricky DeRays from the WrestleHavoc podcast, signing out. Peace.